Um, I know this is not an autobiographical book. I mean, I don't think you have a twin brother.
I don't,
You
and
don't
I
have
didn't grow up
twin
in a mission hospital.
but you were born in Ethiopia, and there's
Yes.
even reference to the coup. I mean, obviously, it's your memory and your life that you led there,
Yeah.
and then they end up coming to America,
Right.
In very similar kind of a journey that you
Yeah,
took.
yeah.
What were you trying to accomplish by narrating? I mean, but it's such a rich sort of life that you have wonderful memories of
Yes,
course.
exactly. So, the story, the actual story, has nothing at all in connection with my life. Really, I never had a twin. My parents are not physicians, but the geography and the politics of the era that I lived through, since they were things that I knew well, I decided that, I would make use of them. Plus, the almost the operating metaphor in my life, and maybe in yours too, is that geography is destiny. Had I not been born in Ethiopia, had my parents not been hired there to be teachers, had they not met within a week or two of arriving there, had they not married and had me, you can go on like that. So I love the idea of the twins' geography, despite the fact that they're born to a nun and an Englishman. They could have been anywhere. Their geography, made their fate almost certain to point in this direction. And then one of them is forced into exile, comes to America, another dislocation. So in that sense, I was covering territory that I knew. But I also very much wanted to contrast two kinds of medicine that I've seen, but that doesn't make it autobiographical. One is the sort of very bare bones medicine of a mission hospital where, you have nothing. You have just the bare minimum. And the great beauty of that setting is that you can't disguise the nature of the patient-physician relationship with all these suites and technology and consults and, the sort of the nature of suffering, the fiduciary responsibility of the physician, all that is just palpable and naked. And I wanted to contrast that with sort of Western medicine, inner city medicine. And so in that sense, it's autobiographical in the sense that I tap into things that I know well. But I think unless you're writing abject science fiction, and even then, one can't help, the whole point of a novel, I suspect, is to, in a sense, put forth a point of view, a worldview, and I've certainly tried to do that.
Now, there are a few doctors who write. In fact, there are a couple of other South Asian doctors who are writing also. But what is this urge to write? I mean, I'm a journalist, so I can understand that.
Yeah.
But you chose a very different profession.
Yeah.
And you love your profession. It's very
Very
clear.
much so.
It's very clear in your writings also, and I'm sure you're a wonderful doctor. You're at Stanford University now, and a tenured position. You're doing very well in your profession. But where did that urge come from? I mean, you mentioned why you went to Iowa's Writers' Workshop.
Yeah. So, I don't know where the urge comes from necessarily. I mean, and I don't know that there's something that special about medicine. My thought always when people say there's so many doctors who write, I always think maybe there's not enough who write, given how many of us are privy to the sort of extraordinary stories that one encounters in medicine. So I think the urge to write comes out of the sense of having witnessed lots of, really deeply moving things, the sense of having a truth to convey that you've learned from watching, some very beautiful and sad things play out in your life. That may be the fundamental urge, but, in my case, I think that it was very much that. But I think writing always had an appeal to me. Had I grown up in this country, I think that I might have become a journalist. It certainly was not something I was aware of as a career, and I happen to love medicine. I'm not saying I went into medicine by default, but I never saw that as a viable option. And then, as life went on, I took up writing the way I suspect that some people might take up golf or take up photography, and it became serious for me. Having said that, I do think it's important that the writing be judged by the craft itself. In other words, the fact that I'm a physician or you're a lawyer or you're an MBA or, it's irrelevant. And we'll start putting degrees on these novels. So when you're not writing about your profession, I don't think you should put your MD behind it. So it's significant that I'm a physician, but it's not significant to the way the book should be judged, as my thesis. And even in nonfiction books, I did not put MD behind it. I'm not hiding the fact that I'm a doctor, but neither is this a diet book. So I'm always sort of asked this question about medicine and writing, and to me they're inexorably linked. They're not something separate, even though they're judged separately. medicine judges my abilities by various measures, and similarly the writing world judges, the reader judges. So I think it's a curious thing about the author that he happens to be a physician, but I don't think it's relevant directly.
And how do your students take to that, and the fact that even the university,
Yes, it's varied. I've been at 3 different universities in the course of writing this book, these books, and I think the first place was somewhat mystified, by the sort of success or not success, but the notoriety that the first book achieved.
Doctors do write books, but they're
doctors do write
medical
books, yeah. But this was on the front cover of the New York Times book review, and it was, I was on Good Morning America, and all of a sudden there was lots of media attention to the story that I was telling that had taken place in the past, and I think it sort of set the university back a bit. They were a little surprised by it, and then I moved from there to San Antonio because of the books. In a sense, my books were being taught in humanities programs, in medical humanities programs, and I was given the opportunity to try and start one, and I thought, well, let me try this. I had visited humanities programs, and I saw what they did, trying to teach students about Chekhov and Tolstoy, and I thought this is a good idea. And I did it, I think, well, and we built a very good center and got funding, but I felt that my real calling was to the bedside, to be a clinician and to teach at the bedside. And Stanford, for the first time, was a university that said, we'll protect your time. Yeah, you can be a clinician, but your research equivalent will be you go do whatever you're going to do, writing 2 days a week, and this other time is ours, and this is what we want you to do, is just be a clinician and be a teacher and be responsible for the students. And I love that. It's like a dream job.
Great, yeah.
And the great irony is I could not have done that any other way. I could not have done it except by being a foreign graduate, being in an underserved area, going to a school that didn't put pressure on me to write grants, so I could be in El Paso, Texas, and be a busy clinician, but my weekends, my nights were mine, which you can't do at a big school. You're still, the pressure is on to get tenure and so on. So I look at the incredible irony, if you will, or the wonderful irony of having to be there to now be at Stanford. And it's quite
do you require your students
humbling
to read?
Oh gosh, no.
No, in fact, them a richer and better doctors and human beings.
Well, I like to read. I thought you were going to say read my book.
Well, that too.
No. Well, I'm very responsible for their 3 months in internal medicine. They have so much to read in medicine, but I like to think that they're incredible students at Stanford. They're incredible everywhere I've been, but exceptionally so at Stanford, because they seem to recruit for people who have been in the jungle for 3 years, serving the natives, and patented this gene, and they're incredibly talented. I like to sort of bring them to the humanity of the person at the bedside. We can get too caught up in all the technology, and in that context, I will often mention, different pieces of literature that might be relevant. For example, if you really want to understand end of life, you can read a textbook on end of life, but you read Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich, and you are there. You feel this very powerful man's desire to have someone feel pity for him. He wants someone to feel sorry for him, and the only person who does that is his servant, not his wife, not his esteemed colleagues. I think that I love that phrase. Fiction is the great lie that tells the truth about how the world lives. And so for our students to imagine the suffering of the patient, literature is wonderful, and I point them to it, but not as systematically as I did when I ran a humanities center.